In any race, there are days that loom large, and this was one of those. Stage 3 of the UAE Tour, destination JEBEL JAIS. Winds just picking up, danger of crosswinds out there in some of the flatter sections before the big kick up to the line, and huge expectations on the shoulders of Tadej Pogačar and UAE Team Emirates. It's the home race after all. This was our start, just jinking inland from the coast before returning back, visiting a couple of islands, and then heading off up towards the ultimate test. JEBEL JAIS, one of just 2 climbing days involved in this year's race, and always going to be the GC contenders towards the end. Big question was, who would take it on early, and would we have another scrap for that black jersey with 2 bonus sprints along the way? Well, fine conditions, blue skies, sharp shadows and sharp minds as well, especially for those in that black jersey competition. Not surprisingly, Soudal, who trailed by just a couple of points in the overall competition for that black intermediate sprint jersey, he was going for it for Team Solution Tech Vini Fantini. He was alone at first with 3 around from Bardiani, including the black jersey himself. So Duric was called up to help out by Soudal, and they started to attack each other. Well, level on points at the beginning of the day they might have been, both Tarozzi in black and Soudal, his nearest rival, caught out this time, and it was left to Duric to try and limit the damage up front. Tarozzi finishing second behind Duric, teammate of Soudal, who would indeed try and leapfrog with another chance up the road. Well, crosswinds were always a threat, and as the road started to chop and change in terms of direction, well, those corners were all raced for. Very hot day again out in the saddle, and a long one too, and the gap was always kept rather marginal. Was a danger when it got down to under a minute that they might sit up, but the battles raged on. Attack after attack came from those who would try and do battle for this intermediate jersey. Soudal, it was on this occasion, who kicked on. Dragging back up was Duric as well, trying to stay useful and relevant within this group. Conforti staying with him. So each acting as anchors for another. This was where the black jersey had been left behind, and Soudal bravely pushed on 8 points, mainly took the lead in that competition. Narrow margins certainly in that battle for the intermediate sprints. That particular fight put to one side at this point, and then of course the last 21 kilometres raising up to us, intermediate sprints dealt with, and the final climb of the day looming large. Well, the road up to the top is fairly even, but it was a rough ride, I'm afraid, for Aina Rubio. Got himself a puncture. His bike, despite the fact he's one of the primary riders for Movistar, was not on the side of the car. It was a long exchange and a real fight to get back on for him. Last man standing, Conforti for the breakaway, was finally wound in, and of course, naturally enough, UAE Team Emirates was setting the pace. Some great work was being done out there. Novak called to the fore, Javine preserved for a job late on for Tadej Pogačar, and finally getting himself back on. Aina Rubio, after a real grind and a lot of wasted energy out there, we were wondering how a man who'd gone so well on this climb in the past would function at the very last. Well, as the kilometres disappeared, so did the help, and finally it had to be that those who were GC ambitions would come to the fore. Finally, Novak pulled to one side. Javine knew that it wasn't going to be long, with Lotto at the front, with Lenny van Eetveld surely perhaps imposing themselves. Weaving their way, the helpers, those who'd been trusted lieutenants throughout the day, ending up at the side of the road, just had to get themselves home. Decathlon AG2R Le Mondial, working for Felix Gall and Paul Seychelles. Sensational effort by the men in turquoise and blue. Not so much battle plan for others who, quite frankly, just found the day too fatiguing by the end. Pace extraordinarily high, nudging up towards 42 kilometres throughout. Tadej Pogačar checking over his shoulder, coming into that crucial final section. We've had sprints in the past. How many would be involved at the end, or could a solo rider go off? Well, meters were running out as he came through the barrier security section here, and then into the barriers themselves off the back of this turn. Finish line in sight, action stations called, and indeed action would be delivered, but when from Tadej Pogačar? That was the big question. It wasn't if, it was when, and quite frankly, it was very, very late. Around about 200 metres to go. Jay Vine was with his nose in the wind, offering as much protection as he possibly could. Flamme Rouge now a distant memory, and everyone lining up to see what Tadej Pogačar did. When he jumps, everyone else has to do precisely the same. Rubio distanced. What a shame for him, and maybe just more team backup would help. Just getting the basics right in the future. Well, there's only one more climbing day after this one to come within this race, but this had to be dealt with first. Onto the barriers went, of course, Tadej Pogačar as Jay Vine had done his job, opened up, steaming it home. Absolutely brilliant. Genius at work. The rainbow stripes heading for the line. Oscar Onley doing a sensational job, and likewise Felix Gall and Van Eetveld, who'd had success here in the past. But it was Tadej Pogačar's day. Brilliant. Enough time to celebrate and take the lead of the race. Mentioned in dispatches, you had to be out there. Josh Tarling sensationally would be second overall by the end of the day, really wrestling to defend that leader's jersey, but in the end the margins spoke volumes. Bonus seconds up the line as well for Tadej Pogačar. He really looked like he owned the place. Jebel JAIS belonged to him. Oscar Onley for Picnic Post NL crossing the line. Felix Gall in the frame as well. For Decathlon AG Tour Le Mondial, Van Eetveld for Lotto, and Little Trek Ciccone, all functioning very, very well indeed. Tadej Pogačar is your man. He leads overall as well by 18 seconds. Sensational ride by Pogačar. He now has to go in preservation mode, waiting for Jabal Hafit on Sunday, and some sprinting days to come in the meantime. Sensational day of racing at the UAE.